But it all kind of came back to the plan and really kind of distincting like the distinction between what is your financial plan? What are your financial goals? And really that kind of being the catalyst for all of the other potential mistakes. So I think we're going to spend a few minutes here just kind of discussing how we view the plan and how that helps filter all of the decisions that go into retirement planning. So
Sure.
Adam, why don't you riff on that for a little bit in terms of where where we see the importance of a retirement plan in the context of someone coming to the office for the first time.
Sure. Yeah. Most people say something to the effect of, I would like to retire by this particular date or in the next few months or years. Um, and that's fairly easy to understand. In this context, retirement means no longer earning a paycheck from an employer, able to sustain oneself using investment accounts, assets, income sources in retirement. So when somebody says they want to retire, of course, we have to ask a lot of clarifying questions. And those clarifying questions really are the beginnings of the making of a retirement plan.
Hmm.
Um, so, for example, somebody says, I want to retire. Great. When would you like to be done? Oh, gosh, I'd really like to be done next year at this time. Okay. Do you have a sense for what it costs to be you? In other words, to live your lifestyle. And we'll kind of clarify how some of those expenses might change once you do retire. But if we understand kind of what the lifestyle costs when you want to retire, then we can start to focus on the math. And then the math turns into things like income planning, investment management, tax planning, estate planning, Social Security optimization, pension choices, and on we go. Which, to your point earlier, is why this gets difficult to kind of narrow it down to what are the big three. The big one is the big mistake people often make is they don't really have a plan. They have a finish line that
Hmm.
for us as retirement planners is kind of like a starting line because now
Yeah.
we really need to start putting, putting things into place so the rubber meets the road. And the objective for us is to hopefully help you not get blown up and have to go back to work because the retirement plan failed.
Yeah, and that's really an interesting point because the plan, like starting point, like thinking about retirement, sometimes those are now 10, 20, sometimes 30 years you're in
Mhm.
retirement. And think, how much you can change, how much your philosophy can change. Of course, the market's going to change. There are things around us that are always going to change. But so having a filter to go through is so beneficial because it may be the biggest mistake is I took Social Security too early. But you wouldn't know that if you were just trying to do that on an island, make that decision in a silo on itself, that would be very difficult. But then when you layer in the taxes, you layer in the estate planning, you layer in the I want to leave a legacy for the next generation, then that's where you can kind of backfill. So kind of beginning with the end in mind, then going back to, okay, what does this mean for the decision today?
You know what's interesting?
Go ahead.
As I'm hearing you say that, what comes to mind is that can feel limiting in some ways.
Mm,
Because if I come to you and you say you need a plan, doesn't that kind of feel like we're going to have to say no to some things? Doesn't it feel like compromises will have to be made and trade-offs and it can feel limiting. And I think, for example, use the word budget.
mm,
To a lot of people, budget is just like, oh, it just hits me between the eyes. It's like, oh, that means I can't spend money on things that are frivolous, that I
mm.
enjoy. Needs only, no wants. Well, that's not what we're trying to get to here. We don't want this to feel limiting. In fact, there's an old expression that structure brings freedom.
Yeah.
So if we know what the guardrails are, and if we know kind of what the playing field looks like, within that we can get pretty creative and we can have a lot more fun. And that can be really invigorating if we start with some constraints that we agree to.